Today's case is about the disappearance of a university student, aged just 19. The facts of this case are concentrated on several mysterious clues that occurred in the 5 days leading up to his disappearance. Court testimonies detail numerous connections made between the boy's family, friends, and strangers. Today, you will learn about the mysterious disappearance of Bryce Laspisa. Bryce David Laspisa was born on April 30th, 1994, the only child of Michael and Karen Laspisa. They lived in Illinois, Chicago, USA, but in 2012 the family, which was doing well financially, decided to move to a city called Laguna, California. When they moved, Bryce was 18 years old, had just finished high school, and chose to attend a college in Rocklin, which was a 7-hour car ride from the new house. I'm adding this information here at the beginning because it is of fundamental importance to everything that will happen in today's case. Due to the distance, he had to live on campus. He soon settled into his shared apartment with another student. He made friends and started dating a girl called Kim Sly. He was living the typical life of a young college student. Classes, friends, parties, and freedom. At the end of his first school year, during the holidays which began May 2013, Bryce went to his parents' house in Laguna to spend the summer vacation. Everything seemed normal. Bryce and his parents were close, they were very open, talked about everything, and he was not the type of son to rebel or cause problems. After spending May, June, and July with his parents, Bryce returned to campus 2 weeks before classes were due to resume. This is common among students who prefer to take some time to reacclimatize to their environs and to reorganize their accommodation. He wanted to meet up with his friends and go clubbing before his arduous university classes restarted. But on August 23rd, Bryce's parents received a call from his girlfriend, Kim. Kim explained that Bryce was acting out of character. He seemed like a different person. Kim had never called Bryce's parents before, and they naturally found the call to be a little strange, but they thanked her for her concern and decided to call their son to find out what was going on. When Michael and Karen called, Bryce was in his dorm playing video games with a friend, and he seemed completely normal. He even told his parents about the new classes he was going to take. He said that everything was cool there. He was just relaxing, and his parents didn't mention that Kim had called them. While there was nothing strange in his behavior, they thought, well, let's pay more attention to his attitude. After all, it could be that he no longer wants to continue seeing Kim, and he's only acting strangely with her. 3 days later, on the 26th of August, Bryce's parents received another call. This time it was from Bryce's roommate, Nick. Only Kim was with him. Nick told them that Bryce was drinking too much. Not like other young people who drink at parties, he was drinking way too much. He told them that Bryce had drunk 2 bottles of whiskey on his own over one weekend. The two also reported that Bryce had spent the entire weekend playing video games, had not slept, and was very agitated. What Nick and Kim didn't tell them was that Bryce had also been taking methamphetamines, and not for the first time. Methamphetamine is a psychoactive drug that stimulates the central nervous system. The drug has an effect similar to cocaine. The main risk is that overuse leads to mood disorders, anxiety, insomnia, and aggression. There is also the possibility of memory problems and psychotic symptoms, such as hearing non-existent voices, believing in unreal things, or having meaningless. And all of these symptoms will drastically worsen if the medicine is mixed with alcohol. Bryce was only 19 years old, and legally he could only drink alcohol at 21. But at university, it is very common for young people to access both alcohol and illegal drugs. Returning to the call, Bryce's parents said that during the vacation they didn't notice anything different in their son's behavior, or any signs that he was even drinking. After the second call, the parents decided to call Bryce one more time to see if he was really okay. When they spoke to him, they thought he sounded completely normal. The next day, the 27th, Bryce did the same thing that he had done the day before. He spent the day drinking alcohol and playing video games. Nick tried to speak to his friend, but Bryce paid little attention to him. He called Kim and asked her to come over and try to speak to Bryce again. She went to the apartment, but the couple argued and she soon left. Towards the end of the night, Bryce sent a brief text message to Kim in which he broke up with her. The following day, the 28th, Bryce went to Kim's house to talk to her in person, but they argued again. He called his parents and asked them to talk to her, because she had taken his car keys and wouldn't give them back. On the call, Kim explained that Bryce had broken up with her, and he had become very agitated when he visited her house to talk. She didn't want to give him the keys because she didn't think he should be driving in such a state. Kim suggested that he get a taxi and return to collect the keys the following day, but he wanted his car. And worried about him, Kim revealed that Nick had told her that Bryce had been drinking all the previous night and hadn't slept in a couple of days. Karen's idea was to get him out of there, out of Kim's apartment, because she realized that her son no longer wanted to be there with his girlfriend, or in this case, now ex-girlfriend. After a few minutes of conversation, Bryce told his mother that he would call her back as soon as he left Kim's house. He would call again when he got home. Karen then spoke to Kim again and asked her to return the car keys to her son. As soon as Bryce got in the car, he called his mother. The two talked, and Karen felt confident that her son was okay to drive. But before they finished the call, she told him that she was going to meet him in person. She would buy a flight ticket and stay with him for a few days. Bryce said it wasn't necessary because he was coming back home the next day. It was almost 11 p.m. Karen was tired, but after this call she couldn't sleep. 2 hours later, at 1 a.m., Bryce called again. He says he had met up with some friends to eat and had just gotten home. He was going to go to sleep, and the next morning around 8 a.m., he would call her before hitting the road. The next morning, 29, around 9 o'clock, Karen's phone rang. She answered it thinking it was her son, but was surprised to hear the voice of a stranger. The call was from Bryce's car insurance company. They were calling her after their calls to him were unanswered. Bryce had called the insurance company early in the morning requesting assistance, but the service was inoperative at that time. They rang back as soon as they saw the calls, but Bryce was not answering, and after giving up calling him, the company called the policy's secondary phone number, in this case, his mother. Karen was extremely worried and tried to call her son several times, but again he didn't answer. It was then that she realized something strange. Why was he ringing his insurance company if, according to what he said, he should be at home sleeping? Karen then called Nick, his roommate, who told her the alarming news. Bryce had not returned to the apartment the night before. Karen talked to her husband, Michael, and they decided to look at their banking app. Bryce had a credit card as a dependent of theirs. They wanted to see if he had used the card somewhere, and perhaps there might be some clue as to what had happened. The couple discovered that a transaction was made using the card that same day at a roadside tyre shop near the city of Buttonwillow. Michael and Karen went online and did a web search to find the shop's address and telephone number. They called the tyre shop, and the manager Carlos answered. He explained how Bryce came into contact with his establishment. Bryce had called him at dawn around 1:30 a.m. He had run out of gas at the side of the road and found Carlos's phone number on the internet. It was the closest place to where his car had stopped. He gave him his location, and Carlos brought him 3 gallons of gas. Karen and Michael had so many questions. Did Bryce stop on the road to sleep? Or worse, did he have an accident? And this is where this mystery starts to become more confusing. 15 minutes after this conversation, the couple's phone rang again. It was Carlos again. He said he was going to another job and had passed by the same place where he met Bryce the previous night, and he saw that Bryce was still there. He was sitting on the street, next to his car. Carlos approached him and asked if everything was okay, and he said yes. Bryce said he had slept in the car, but now he was ready to get on the road again. As it was almost 9:30 a.m. and the tyre shop's location was approximately 1 hour away from campus, Bryce should have been approximately 6 hours from his home. He should have arrived home between 3:30 and 4 p.m. But after 4, Bryce had not shown up or even called. Karen spent all this time calling her son, but he wasn't answering. She did this until 6 p.m. when she decided to go to the police to file a missing persons report. The first thing the police asked for was Bryce's cell phone number, and luckily his operator had an emergency system integrated that allowed them to identify the user's location. They looked it up, and guess where the cell phone record said Bryce was? On a road in Buttonwillow, just 13 kilometers away, from the place he was when the tyre repairman called. In other words, after talking to his parents, he left in the car, drove a little, then stopped at that location. Karen and Michael couldn't think of anything other than an accident. The Laguna County Sheriff's Office contacted the Bakersfield police station near the town of Buttonwillow and provided details of Bryce's car and a physical description. A patrol car was sent, and it didn't take long for the pair of police officers to find both. The car and Bryce stopped on the side of the road. The agents approached him, checked the car, no alcohol, no drugs, nothing irregular, nothing strange, and they even made Bryce take a breathalyzer test, which was clear, not a hint of alcohol. Contrary to the information given by his friend and ex-girlfriend that he had been drinking a lot lately. At that moment, Bryce was completely sober. Bryce explained that he decided to stop to de-stress a little. The police asked him to call his parents, but Bryce didn't want to call. The police officers had to make the call to Karen themselves and urged the boy to talk to his parents. The call was made and Bryce was a little upset with his mother for calling the police. At the end, Karen asked to speak again to the police officer. Karen asked him if they thought Bryce was really fit to drive, and they said yes. They did not find anything strange about the car and that everything seemed normal. Bryce had passed all their sobriety tests, so for them, there was no reason to stop the boy from continuing his journey. The police released Bryce and he left. At 8 a.m. on the 30th, the doorbell at the Laspisa house rings. Karen ran to hug her son, but when she opened the door, she was faced with 2 police officers who told her that Bryce's car had been found overturned on an embankment at Castaic Lake, 2 hours away from their house. The police arrived at the Laspisa home based on the car registration that was in their system because of the police report she had filed the previous day. A sad coincidence, but one that made this terrible news travel as quickly as possible. Assessing the scene of the accident, there were signs that Bryce had driven his car up a slope, which gave access to a retreat area. From this viewpoint, you could see a lake. It was also a place where many people passed by and stopped to take photos. However, the marks on the ground indicated that when Bryce reached the stop, instead of stopping, he accelerated as if he wanted to drive the car into the lake. But the bank had a slope, and the car overturned during its descent. The rear window of the car had been broken from the inside, probably where Bryce would have exited after surviving the fall. His cell phone and laptop were inside the car, but his suitcase and wallet were found outside. The forensic examination carried out at the scene detected 3 very small traces of blood inside the car, which were later confirmed to be from Bryce. But these marks were so small that they did not indicate that they were the result of an accident, of something that had caused such serious damage as that accident could cause. Sniffer dogs were used, and they responded positively that Bryce had been at the top of the slope. They tracked his scent towards the road, stopping at a truck stop, and with this clue, searches were carried out on the ground by the forest guard, as well as by helicopters, and divers even searched the local lake, but still no Bryce. During the investigation, the police interviewed Kim and Nick. Kim did not offer any substantial information, while Nick told the police something that raised some suspicions about his whereabouts. He said that before Bryce went to Kim's house on the night of 28, Bryce had given him his Xbox video game, a diamond ring, and some other personal items. Nick thought it was strange and asked what it meant, was going to drop out of college, but Bryce said no. It wasn't like that at all. He was giving it because he was a friend and that was it. Nick even said something like, "Do you want me to keep it for you?" And Bryce said, "No, I'm giving it to you." Based on this conversation and the messages exchanged between Bryce and Kim, 3 theories are widely discussed, but although they make some sense, none of them are 100% reliable. The first theory says that Bryce had already planned to take his own life. Although this theory is believed by some, then where is the body? The police believe in another, second theory, which says that Bryce wanted to start a new life. Bryce wanted to disappear into the world and adopt a new identity. The fact that the sniffer dogs took Bryce's tracks to a truck stop suggests to them that this location would be the likely beginning of a new life. They believe that Bryce is alive and does not want to be found. However, they have not yet been able to find any motivation for this. And here it's worth noting another observation, which is not a theory, but some suggest that Bryce had been upset or shocked to discover that he was adopted. And this is why he chose to take his own life, as in Theory 1, or disappear as in Theory 2. But there is a problem here. Bryce had always known he was adopted, and it was never a problem for him. Bryce's family do not believe any of these theories, and continue to support a third theory. He could have been in a car accident, fell from the vehicle, and hit his head, and this ended up causing amnesia. They believe that Bryce is alive somewhere. But if this is true, how come no one, in all these years, has not recognized him through the various photos spread in newspapers and on the internet? Bryce had a very distinctive appearance. His physical characteristics are easy to recognize. For example, he was red-headed and had a very large tattoo of a bull on his left arm that went from halfway up his arm and goes up to his shoulder. But there is a fourth theory, little discussed, but which makes a little sense. Could it be that with amnesia, he asked someone on the road for help and ended up being kidnapped, and in the worst case becoming a victim of organ trafficking? It's difficult to believe that such an unfortunate coincidence could have occurred, but given all the theories discussed, this is the only one that explains everything. But it is an explanation that the police and the family refuse to believe. Private Kim, along with Bryce's parents, formed a Facebook group to help publicize the case and also used to distribute flyers in California about the disappearance. You can see from her personal Facebook page that she was very sad for a long time and that she was really committed to helping his family. Karen and Michael have suffered a lot over their son's disappearance, including people's criticism that they didn't go and check their son's situation and left him to return home alone. But this is a complicated part of the story because Bryce was their son, and he may have wanted them to stay out of his affairs at that time. Bryce Laspisa has been missing for more than 10 years, and his family and friends still hope that one day they will at least discover what happened to him.